So we are again going to get started. Thank you for joining us and for right away noticing and wondering. Okay, so we are in the Blitz. We are in the second half of the Blitz, so to speak, knowing that it is August 15th and you perhaps have had a chance to join other Wayne Risa colleagues in their Blitz session. So thank you for joining me in mine. I'm Melissa Wilson, one of our Wayne Risa literacy consultants. My email is there. Please use it. Please email me if you have questions about follow-up strategies or even sharing this with your district or building. We'd love to hear from you. So please do email with any questions or requests that you might have. It's a great way for us to connect with our districts and with those that we support with these little tidbits and little sessions that we do here in the summer. So the QR code, if you just joined us, should take you to the sign in, and at least for the first 5 minutes or so, we are going to also have the link in the chat. I won't have a lot of protocols because we have a short time together, but the one that I will use is connected to the symbol that you see on my screen. You see two chat boxes or conversation boxes. Whenever you see that symbol, that will be your invitation to especially insert some feedback into the chat. And so if you're thinking about sharing this or any other information that I might share with you, with those in your district or building, consider what kind of protocol might you use that allow people to share and express their ideas, perhaps in a setting where it's not possible for us all to lift our ideas aloud. So today we'll use the chat function. Certainly we will invite those to unmute and share if you'd like, but we would love to see your ideas, especially your noticings and wonderings in the chat when you see the icon there. So just a quick tidbit about who I am at Wayne Risa and where we might also intersect, or where you might consider inviting me to intersect within your space and place. Again, my name is Melissa Wilson, and as part of the literacy team at Wayne Risa, I certainly support in a wide way, but I also have some specific areas where I intersect with our work. Those areas are listed there, but it's our K-5 instructional spaces, especially working with our essential practices and systems work. I also am heavily involved in our coaching and COSA initiative. So if you're a COSA, a coach, or you have coaching systems in your district, that also is a space where I enjoy supporting. Along with K-5 instruction, I also support our early childhood and GSRP teachers and teams. So that too is part of the work that I'm blessed to do at Wayne Risa. And then one of the big projects that I touch upon, and Nicole as well, who's with me, our Summer Learning Lit Lab initiative, where we consider what can we do to engage students in kindergarten and third grade in an interactive, engaging opportunity and project in the summer. So that's just a tidbit about me, where we might have intersected before and where you might consider inviting me to intersect with your teams and districts in the future. So for our time today, when we're thinking about noticings and wonderings, I also want to acknowledge that a lot of this content and the concept was inspired by Tracy Donahue, who's assistant professor at Central Michigan University. And I first came across Tracy this past year when I had the chance to attend the Early Childhood Conference, the Michigan version. It was a wonderful opportunity to think about, especially how does our pre-K and early childhood team and teachers truly influence and set the stage for what we then do in our K-5 instruction. And so this is where I first thought deeply about noticing and wondering and how it might really engage our students, especially as we think about the beginning of the year and our aims to do that good fine work with our students in classrooms at the beginning of the year. So I want to invite us to really put on the mindset and the mind frame of thinking about curiosity. And one of the characters that pops into my mind when I think about being curious is Curious George, hence the name. Curious George, as perhaps you know, was getting into trouble, so to speak, but really he was a risk taker. And he was really interested in learning more, exploring more, and doing more, and really pushing the boundaries of what was right and wrong when you consider the text that he was placed in as a character. But from one of his books by H.A. Ray, we think about his opportunity to consider a simple box And he wondered, what was inside that large box? And so we set the stage there and ask ourselves, with our students, whether they be early childhood students or students in fourth grade, when do we give them the chance to ask those simple questions? What's inside that large box? We think about our time commitments and our expectations that are put upon us, our plates, our desks, our shoulders, and our hearts, all throughout the school year, especially at the beginning. And so, if you'll let me, I want to invite you to consider, where within our classroom spaces, places, including the walls, do we create a space for students to notice and wonder? And if we created more of that space, both inside our classroom and outside, how might that benefit students both socially and academically as we aim to take care of the whole child of those children that will be in your seats and spaces this year? So let's do some deeper thinking about noticing and wondering, and how it might be that simply elegant strategy that we haven't considered that really could benefit our kids. So I'll invite you to ask yourself, what have you noticed lately? And when we say notice, we know that that invites a pause. In order for me to really notice something, I can't be eyes straight forward. I have to be able to use my peripheral vision, so to speak, and look widely around me. That may be noticing a person, that might be noticing a place, that might be noticing a project, that might be noticing my own breath and demeanor. But we ask ourselves, what have you noticed lately? And what did that notice perhaps influence a wonder? So there's our symbol. If you're with me in the beginning, we said, whenever you see that double chat symbol, that will especially be a time for you to insert something in the chat. So let's just take 30 seconds. And if you're willing, in the chat, share with us a wonder. What have you wondered lately? This could be something small, large, world impacting, or personal impacting, whatever you're willing to share. But take 30 seconds if you're willing. And let's insert a wonder. What have you wondered lately? Thank you, Nicole, for sharing that. There's a lot of wonders there. Beginning of school year. How do our words match our actions? Blessings of new children in the family. AI. Balancing a newborn and back to school. So a lot of wonders there too. A lot of expectations. So hopefully you're reading through the wonders as I am. Wonders about students and how they're coming to us both prepared or needing support. Absolutely. So as we think about the wonders that we have, both personal and connected to the world and school, we think about, where have we allowed not only spaces for ourselves to wonder like that, to pause and process, which we know is so very important for our own development, but where within our classrooms and schools have we inserted those spaces for our classes and students to do just that? Now, perhaps it took us a few minutes, not just 30 seconds, but let's say max 3 minutes to list those wonders. We might ask ourselves, where are there small moments or intentional areas within our schedule where we might insert some more wonders and noticings? So let's continue to do some thinking about that. As it sounds like you're doing that now. You're thinking about your classes, you're thinking about the students coming to you, and perhaps now we're considering, how might more time to notice and wonder benefit not just us, but our students as well. So when we think about the notice and wonder approach, it actually is an instructional approach. One might call it a protocol. But I hope to share a few more protocols with you. So I would invite you to consider the notice and wonder as an intentional routine or an intentional instructional strategy that you might utilize within your classroom. And the why behind that is, again, elegantly simple. We know that research suggests the more we allow students the space and place to notice and wonder, the benefit we'll see in their critical thinking. We'll see increased curiosity naturally. And we also most likely will see a deeper understanding of the subject matter that noticing and wonder is associated with. So if you came to a school leader, teacher, coach, and said, I have this strategy, this approach that in many cases, in most cases, research supports that it's going to help our kids to be better critical thinkers, to be more curious, which probably means they're going to talk more in class and have a little more peer discussion. And guess what? They're also going to have a deeper understanding of the content, the subject matter connected to that. I think most folks would say, yeah, let's give that a go. And so we asked ourselves, what might get in the way of noticing and wondering, and how might we remove those roadblocks or those not so sures to really allow more time for noticing and wondering? And really, again, you'll hear me say it's that simply elegant approach. We consider what time have we allotted within our classes and spaces, and how might we engage in more noticing and wondering? It truly is elegantly. We were thinking about the simply elegant instructional approach that is the notice and wonder. In a moment, we'll take a look at what that looks like specifically within content areas and give you some more routines and protocols to consider around that more umbrella approach of noticing and wondering. But in its simplicity, the first step is simply to intentionally, so this is our teacher role, intentionally to have planned what is that we're going to invite students to either observe, whether it's an object. If you're thinking about early childhood, you're thinking about having those wonder tables or perhaps even a wonder box that students are able to engage in. If we're thinking about our older students, we're thinking about most likely a phenomenon. And so we're especially thinking about a short video clip they can view. It could be an experience of going outdoors to explore. It could be a photo. It really could happen in any media. But in some case, there is something that we are intentionally inviting students to observe. And so there is the intentionality and the connection to the content. After we've invited them to observe, which you can imagine in its own light, also has some close viewing strategies in it. Actually teaching kids, how do we notice? How do we pause to observe something closely? What does that look like and sound like, especially if more than one of us is trying to observe or notice something together in a group? From there, then, we are simply, after allowing students time to observe, we're inviting their observations to be shared, whether that's shared in a small group, whether it's shared in a public space, whether that's online or in person, whether we're using a digital tool or simply talking. We're inviting those observations to be shared, and we're phrasing them as noticings. What did you notice? And as teachers, we're not seeking to guide the conversation in that first invitation. We're looking for the students to share what they noticed and to bring their own agency and light into what they're viewing. From there, we ask, based on that notice, what did that make you wonder? And so that follow-up question is very important because my noticing might be very factual, it might be short or brief. And by inserting that follow-up question of, what did that invite you to wonder? Or what did that make you wonder? That's then when we're asking students to critically think about, okay, I noticed something, but where then lies the wonder? And that's where the engagement in our content lies. And so when we think about the notice and wonder, we're thinking about really these three pieces. How does it position children as agency owners of their own learning? What is the adult's role in the notice and wonder protocols and approach? And how do we get started, especially as we're thinking about the beginning of the school year? That keeps going backwards. I wonder why my presentation keeps giving you a review. We'll continue to notice and wonder together. All right. So when we think about the adult's role, we think about that in three categories. We think about the environment that we as the adult, the instructor, create. We know that in most cases, students spend more time with us than they do within their own homes, aside from perhaps sleeping. And so we like to say that the adults create the environment that the children live in. And so what kind of environment are we creating that naturally and organically is going to invite noticing and wondering? That goes right down to the aesthetics that we provide, as well as the demeanor and way that in which we converse. We also think about the protocols that are utilized within ourselves as adults. What protocols and routines have we set into place? And then we think about our own skills and demeanors, our skills around timing and pacing to allow these noticing and wonderings to happen, and our demeanor as far as our ability to self-regulate and to trust that this is going to require a little more wait time, a little more student facing time and feature, as opposed to more of us talking. And so as we consider the adult's role, those are those three spaces that we live when we hope to increase the notice and wondering time in our classroom. When we think about the environment, perhaps some of you already have something like this set up or prepared to set up as you think about the opening of the school year. We think about, one, how beautiful is it and inviting for students to walk into a classroom where the walls aren't all covered the first week of school. As adults, we certainly see this classroom as a way to show our own personal style and to create an inviting space for children. But we also know that too much can overstimulate children and can set the standard that I, as the teacher, have already decided that these are the things that we're going to be doing and learning. And if I don't leave much space up that's not covered, it might cause a child to wonder, where is my space and place in all of this? And so we consider the benefit of not having our walls covered and not having everything set up so that it truly is an environment of co-learning where the students can see where there's made space for them and where the teacher also has some protocols in place. And so the Wonder Wall is one way of doing that. Now, certainly you could have digital wonder walls with all the blessings of Padlets and other technologies that invite that. But in its basic level, having a space for students to post wonders. Now we can go from the super organized idea of everyone having their own space for a wonder, maybe even their own clipboard, or to simply having a space where throughout my time, whether it's a sticky note or whether it is a picture that I'm sketching, where is there a space for me as a student to wonder about what's being shared and then post it widely for others? This also might be a routine that you consider as you think about setting up your classroom routines. As we're learning and thinking together, what is a way for a child to share both visually and otherwise the wonder that they have where it might not fit into that classroom time? We've also even seen wonder books created where students have not just a composition book, but a wonder book where there's a space within the book or their own book in its entirety to place wonders as they're reading and thinking and engaging within the class. We also think about the protocols that we have within our classrooms. And we consider this idea that rituals are nothing but routine with love. And so I'll pause to think on that with you for a moment. Rituals are nothing but routine with love. And so when we think about the protocols and the norms and the expectations, all of those things that we tend to think about and set up at the beginning of the year, we think about those rituals or those practices, those ongoing ways of work that you hope to create in your classroom. And noticing and wondering might be one of those. When I notice and wonder and allow that space for children, I'm setting up a ritual or a way of work within our classroom that says, I value time, I value your voice, I value the opportunity for you to share. And by doing so, I've created a space for noticings and wonderings. And so we ask ourselves, again, what is my pacing and protocol that I've set up that might allow this to happen more so within the opportunities in my classroom? So let's try a photo chat. This is another way to think about the noticing and wonderings in a routine, a ritual that you might consider adopting within your class. And so a photo chat is a simple routine where we display a photo. This could be done as a whole group, a small group, but let's give it a go. You see the symbol there where we invite you to put your wonderings in the chat. And so a photo chat asks us to notice. So you might start off with saying, I notice, and it makes me wonder. And so I'll pause for a moment so you can put some of your noticing and wonderings in the chat. When you look at this photograph, what do you notice and what does it make you wonder? So we're seeing some noticing that there are trees atop this structure and wondering, how did they get there? Someone's noticing that it looks as though this has been broken off from a larger piece and wondering how that might have happened. Noticing the height of the land and the perhaps shallowness of the water and how did that happen? How was it formed? So as you're noticing and wondering, you're most likely like me, going back through and reading some of your colleagues' noticings and wonderings, and consider the opportunity this might create in the classroom. If this was a ritual or a routine that you have in place, whether it be a certain day, a certain time of the day, a certain content area, where we're intentionally taking a photo, image, or video and inviting kids to notice and wonder, especially aligned to the content, the opportunity for discussion, the opportunity to authentically teach and model discussion protocols when engaging in what feels as though perhaps simply elegant routine or structure. And so if you intentionally think about your curricula, if you're blessed to teach social studies or science, the humanities, ELA, really any category, consider how might I intentionally take the content that I'm blessed to teach and project it as an image or video so that students might naturally engage in noticing and wonderings. How might that benefit our curriculum? And so I'll invite you just once more to do this because we're getting our mindsets ready. I'm going to mute just for a moment and consider this question. Where might a photo chat routine support your curricula and engage students in content? I'm curious if there are any ideas. Yeah, so I'll pause for 30 seconds and see if there are some ideas in the chat that you might consider as you're thinking about, how does a photo chat perhaps benefit or support a certain area of my curriculum? What might that look like? So some folks are certainly tying it to especially areas of science, others thinking about vocabulary and how it might especially invite not only new vocabulary formation, but also development in a content area. Another routine to consider as we think about those who are blessed to teach math is a routine that comes from the Multiplicity Lab. Also want to give credit to Dawn Chauvin, one of our math consultants at Wayne Risa. This routine, if you access the QR code, should take you to the Multiplicity Lab itself, but also to consider what routines do we have in math that allow discussion and opportunity to notice and wonder as well. So the look, think, talk is one that, especially when used in math, also benefits children in their discussions and content knowledge. So this is an example, one from a slide from our Kinder Lit Lab. As I mentioned, the Lit Lab is something that we support as far as a summer initiative. And this was actually one of the slides that was for the Kinder Lit Lab, which was for actually incoming kindergartners. And so the routine basically is this. A visual is shown and the Multiplicity Lab has these already created. They also provide a prompt to be considered. And so again, elegantly simple. First, we're noticing this beautiful visual that we see, and then we're invited to wonder about a question connected to mathematics and numeracy. And so the question associated with this image is, are there more donuts with toppings or without? And so I'll pause for you to consider and insert your feedback. When you consider what you see, and certainly as adults, we see the multiple ways that we could consider that question, how might you share your noticings? As you look at this visual of these donuts, are there more donuts with toppings or without? And if you're able to share why you think that or how you think that, that's a blessing too. So I'll pause for a moment for you to consider. Are there more donuts with toppings or without? So if we were in the classroom, a look, think, talk, again, elegantly simple way of noticing and wondering, we're going to look at the visual, we're going to think about the questions that's imposed, and we're going to talk about it. So if we were a classroom, we'd be sharing both what we think as far as are there more donuts with toppings or without, and then also we'd be invited to share why do you think that? And so the look, think, talk routine, again, that follow-up question is important. We're asking students to notice something around numeracy, but then also we're asking that question, and what makes you think that? Or, and why would you think that? Could you tell us more? And so again, it takes the adult out of it. The adult's job is to set up the protocol. It's the student's invitation to consider the question. Here's another example from the Multiplicity Lab. This is from an older grade level. There are numerous grade levels that the Multiplicity Lab provides. But with this question, we're asking about patterns. And so again, you're asked to notice. And then the question is, what patterns do you see? So certainly an image like this is so very much involved. As you pause to notice, you're asking yourself most likely, which area am I noticing? Am I looking at the bird's eye view in completeness? Am I zooming in to certain areas of the playground? The opportunities to discuss and converse are really endless. But again, when we consider the notice and wondering protocol of the look, think, talk, this especially has strong support within our math field as far as giving students a chance to consider. So whether we're looking at donuts or we're looking at a playground, we're giving students a chance to notice and wonder. And so when we consider this question, how does this support math learning and development? Certainly your minds are going to this as well. We can see number sense, there's certainly problem solving, which is our critical thinking, and vocabulary development, which one of our colleagues just mentioned, most likely would be a benefit of utilizing a notice and wonder protocol like this. Someone also already lifted the idea that when we think about noticing and wonderings, we have a wonderful opportunity in this field of science and STEM. And we know from our science consultants that we consider looking at the phenomena first. So certainly I know my next gen science standards, and I know as a classroom teacher what I'm invited to focus upon. But oftentimes we get caught up in our pacing and we do more telling than exploring. And so we ask ourselves, what might be the benefit of providing a phenomena first before engaging in the content? And so phenomena first is a notice and wondering strategy because we're allowing kids to notice first. We're not going to tell, we're going to invite them to explore. And so it might be, again, as simple as projecting this image or a short video clip, but we're asking kids the simple question of, what do you notice? And what do you wonder? And the intentionality is of this phenomena, whether it's a video, whether it's an image, whether it is an exploration, that I'm inviting the students to share first before I, as the instructor, input my content knowledge around the topic. And so again, we're allowing students the opportunity, we're setting the environment and the expectation that their understanding, their person, their agency matters. And we know that because I've made the space in place to notice and wonder within my time and within my space. Some specific teacher moves that again might seem elegantly simple, but again, we think about these intentionally, might look like this. Wait time is something we know the power of, but we know that research supports most teachers actually only have a 1 to 2 second wait time before they insert their voice. And so for you, including more notice and wondering time might be as simple as saying, what is my actual wait time? And how might increasing my wait time actually invite more student voice within my space? We also think about the teacher move of using descriptive language when you're modeling that kind of precise description that you're hoping for from your students. And so when we do that, we might take an example of an exploration or a noticing when students have voiced their opinion. That might just sound like us adding more descriptive words. So a student might say, I see the robin outside as we're observing our space around us. And you say, absolutely. I noticed that the robin is holding that squishy worm within her beak. We also especially hear the teacher move of rephrasing or revoicing to really amplify what students have said. And so when our student might say, I noticed the robin, we're going to rephrase and revoice that so all students can hear and even add on, yes, and that notice the baby robin opened their beaks very wide. And so whether it's wait time, whether modeling descriptive language in our own descriptions, or rephrasing or revoicing what students say, those are some simple teacher moves that again promote the notice and wondering within our own classrooms and provide the chance for students to feel as though they can also share those noticings and wonderings with us. So when we think about the opportunity to notice and wonder, it truly is a simple way to consider how do we start our classroom environments out, both thinking about our environments and our phrasing and our protocols. Simply elegant. That doesn't even take a full hour to consider. But want to give you the remainder of this time, whether it be with others in your own space or as you go about to your next adventure or errand that you might have, to consider how might you take the idea of noticing and wondering and use it as a way to jumpstart and engage your students within the start of the school year. We look forward to engaging with all of you in our districts and our networks this year and appreciate the time that you've shared to really notice and wonder with us today.